It's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Full disclosure, folks, I'm not feeling 100% tonight. I think I've got a touch of the monkeypox. My symptoms are that I'm very hairy, I've got a red bum, I'm climbing trees and I can't stop eating bananas. But we'll get through it. On Mark Dolan tonight, what's it like being married to a genius but a flawed one at that? My Mark Meets guest is the wife of football legend George Best, former Playboy bunny herself, health expert, and LA legend Angie Best. In the big question, should we go vegan to save the planet? Are you willing to give up your steak or your chicken breast or your salmon? And in the news agenda with my panel, should the rich feel guilty? Should Britain return foreign treasure and your dating disasters? And does Britain get enough sleep? Plus another great British game show, a fun game based around a news story of the day. Tonight, guest a celebrity and their wealth. And in my big opinion monologue, why the police have given up on law and order. See you after the headlines with Tamsin. I'm going to enjoy this rather fancy banana.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister insists he won't block names when Sue Gray's report into Downing Street parties is published. Her findings are expected next week. Around 30 people, including Boris Johnson, have been contacted by the Cabinet Office to warn them of the contents of the report, although it's thought not everyone contacted will necessarily be named or identified in the report. Boris Johnson has vowed to shake up Number 10 after 126 fines were issued for breaches during lockdown. A man who attacked a commuter with a machete has been found guilty of attempted murder. A warning: the video you're about to see shows the moment of the attack and may be distressing to some viewers. 34-year-old Ricky Morgan launched an unprovoked attack on the London Underground last summer, hacking at James Porritt as panicked passengers scrambled to get away. Mr. Porritt, who suffered a severe injury to his hand, told jurors it was like a scene out of the sci-fi film Terminator. Celebrity chef Jamie Oliver has been leading a protest at Downing Street over the delay in new junk food laws. An overhaul to buy one, get one free promotions in supermarkets was due to go ahead in the autumn, but it's been pushed back to October next year. Tesco and Sainsbury's say they're committed to the original government deadlines, but the Prime Minister says consumers need to be supported through the cost of living crisis.
There are some things at the moment where we think they make very little difference to obesity, and they can affect people's weekly outgoings, people's budgets. And at this particular time, if people can save on their food bills with some offers, then I think we've just got to be flexible whilst continuing to tackle obesity.
Meanwhile, Jamie Oliver says it's time for change.
This is fundamental, and it's for all your people listening. It's not about one thing here and one thing there. It's a bit annoying. Like, it's as profound as the smoking ban. It saves lives. It's about making young people do better, live longer, and be more productive.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has tested positive for COVID. Writing on Twitter, she says she's experiencing mild symptoms and will work from home over the next few days. Her positive test comes as the UK's COVID alert moved down from level 4 to level 3 today. Wimbledon will be stripped of its ranking points over the decision to ban Russian and Belarusian players from competing at this year's tournament. The decision to exclude athletes from the two nations was made after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Association of Tennis Professionals says the move undermines the principle of players qualifying on merit and without discrimination. The Women's Tennis Association has also decided not to award ranking points following the ban. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In the big question, should we go vegan to save the planet? Is it selfish to eat meat? We'll hear from all sides on that one. Would you be willing to give up your steak, your salmon or your chicken breast? My Mark Meets guest is Angie Best. Of course, a woman who is going to talk about her amazing marriage to the flawed football genius George Best. How do you live with someone that's so talented he doesn't have to try, who's so gifted he's willing to drink his gifts away? Plus, Angie was a model, a Playboy bunny in the 70s for Hugh Hefner, and a businesswoman. Hear Angie Best's amazing story at 10. In the news agenda with my panel, should the rich feel guilty about their wealth? Should Britain return foreign treasure like the Elgin marbles? Your dating disasters, and does Britain get enough sleep? Do you get enough sleep? Reacting to those stories and many more are Dr. Rakib Ehsan, and Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, and David Oldroyd-Bold. Yes, we're travelling business class with my panel tonight. I can guarantee you an explosive 2 hours of Friday night entertainment and stimulation. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. I want to hear from you throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. Big stories, big guests, big debate, and big opinions. Let's start with this one. Great news for criminals. According to the Telegraph newspaper, police detectives are investigating rapes and murders from home, including in areas with some of the worst crime rates in the country. Several forces have now been doing official hybrid working, which allows officers to carry out inquiries without leaving their own homes. Nice work if you can get it. Yes, the country is in the grip of a crime wave with stabbings, burglaries and sexual assaults on the rise. But hey, there are pressing issues at home too. The dog isn't going to walk himself, is he? That banana bread isn't going to bake itself. And let's not forget the importance of catching up on episodes of CSI and Law and Order, all in the name of research, of course. We are, in my view, seeing a crisis in the public sector, in which civil servants, often known as the blob, don't want to deliver government policy because they don't agree with it or because they can't be bothered to turn up to the office to actually do it. We've got woke teachers who want to preach rather than teach, offering a divisive vision of history that casts Britain as the bad guy. We've got universities that want to brainwash youngsters into thinking Brexit is the worst thing ever, and that there are about 100 different genders by which you can identify. The DVLA don't want to issue driver's licences, and the Passport Office are passing the buck when it comes to renewing your documents, and they blame COVID. Of course they do. We've got an NHS in which the people who work in it are fantastic. Doctors, nurses, porters, cleaners, cooks. But an organisation that decided to stop treating people for 2 years because if it wasn't COVID, they didn't care. And in fact, the Smile Free campaign are seeking signatories to an open letter asking the NHS to get rid of face masks in a medical setting, given that their effectiveness is debatable at best, and which many top medics argue is impairing patient treatment and care. Who knew that those filthy rags could actually make you sicker? And last but not least, we have a police force that doesn't want to police. Adding insult to injury, Andy Cook, the new Chief Inspector of Constabulary, suggested the police should use discretion when deciding whether to prosecute shoplifters amid the cost of living squeeze. A police force that doesn't want to police and for which crimes are no longer a crime, more like a police farce. How can working from home be a good idea for our law enforcement? Shall you tell them, or shall I, that criminals, burglars, muggers and violent offenders don't work from home? They are out and about, and they need to be caught. I've always believed our cops to be the best in the world, and that is still my view. But the culture of our police forces at management level leaves a lot to be desired. There's no tough love anymore. The police have gone soft. It's all good cop, when what this country really needs is a healthy dose of bad cop, bad cop. The police have gone from being institutionally racist, which was a horrific disgrace, to being institutionally woke, taking the knee for divisive political organisations like BLM, who we discovered this week, have given millions to family members and cronies, dancing with Extinction Rebellion campaigners during the pandemic, by the way, and asking Insulate Britain numpties whether they're OK or would like a cup of tea or something to eat as they risked lives by gluing themselves to the motorway. And I believe that the police brought themselves into the greatest disrepute in the course of this pandemic when they over-interpreted the nonsensical COVID measures, apprehending someone for queuing up at an outdoor farmer's market and going after a woman sat on her own on a bench at the seaside drinking a coffee. We saw dawn raids on gyms where people were trying to be healthy, and the owners of a greeting card shop in Wales who were apparently a greater threat to public safety than the Taliban. And there was the pathetic spectacle of masked officers pursuing people in supermarkets who were well within their rights to opt out of wearing a face covering. Some particularly thick officers didn't get the memo that you didn't have to wear a mask if you were exempt, and that seeking evidence of exemption was not only not required, but could be viewed by some lawyers as harassment. We also saw transport police chucking maskless commuters off trains and buses. One such video inspired me to chop up a mask on national radio to call out this madness. History has been kind to me. Yes, the law is an ass, but when enforcing these measures, cops were talking out of their backside as well. To add insult to injury, the Met Police in London have spent £500,000, that's right, £500,000 investigating Partygate, an eye-watering waste of money and police time. London is fast becoming the stab capital of Europe, but London cops seem more focused on the number of minutes Boris Johnson was in the presence of a birthday cake. Still, Boris has the last laugh there. With no further fines to come, he's home and hosed, whilst Beergate hypocrite Sir Keir Starmer still has a case to answer. So we need bobbies back on the beat and back in police stations. Anything else sets a dangerous precedent. Who else in the public sector is going to start wanting to work from home? Ambulance drivers, brain surgeons, the fire brigade? Privileged state employees, often with a job for life and gold-plated pensions, are now taking the piss out of the British public. Those in the private sector work for businesses that have to deliver a profit and a great product for their very survival. And whether they work from home or not is often a decision made by their employers. In many cases, bosses have decided the work from home just doesn't work. Even the Bank of England, asleep at the wheel as inflation spiralled, are having their meetings about whether to raise interest rates online, via Zoom, from the luxury of their own homes. How nice for the Bank of England to have a work-life balance too, including their boss, Andrew Bailey, who has allowed inflation to explode on his watch due to inaccurate modelling. Does that remind you of anything? Whilst nicely taking home over £500,000 a year in income. All of this whilst hard-working Brits have serious doubts about whether they can continue heating their homes and feeding their kids. We've all got a stake in the recovery of this country, and we can all make our contribution. Whatever the industry is, it's time for everyone to put in a shift. And that's the least we can ask of our police forces, whose job is a particularly important one, to ensure our safety. At the moment, we've just got law and disorder, and our cops need to ditch the woke stuff as well, like so-called inclusive rainbow cars. Check that out. What a waste of public money. And worse still, rainbow helmets. Take a look at this. What a helmet. And don't get me started on their pursuit of so-called hate crimes, in which officers are more interested in policing tweets than the streets. You tell me what's worse, something unkind written about you on Facebook, or being mugged at knife point for your wallet or your phone. With this desire to work from home, the police have gone from good cop to bad cop to no cop. They've opted for the right to remain silent on real crimes. Much as I love the British police, at the moment, they're not much cop at all. What's your view? Mark at GBNews.uk. Are British police still keeping the country safe? Mark at GBNews.uk is the email throughout the show. You know the best bit of the programme is when you get in touch. Reacting to the big stories of the day and my big opinion monologue are my fabulous panel tonight. Reality star and actress Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, social policy analyst Dr Rakib Ehsan, and journalist and historian David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, let me start with you. Do you think that the police have a reasonable argument that much of their work can be done from home, particularly admin?
I don't really think they do. I think it's yet another instance of the civil service, of the public servants, seeing themselves as a class apart from the rest of the nation and able to indulge themselves rather than working hard for us. Policing's a vocation, I think, rather like nursing, rather like medicine of all kinds, and as the civil service ought to be. It's something that you go into because you wish to be, and the clue's in the name, a servant of civic society. If you try and slack off, particularly given, say, knife crime in London, given how little burglary is prosecuted, given how little people feel that they're actually being protected by the police, I think the police really have to think again about the way that they're approaching their duty to the nation. It's not a question of whether or not they can be slightly more efficient when they're filling in paperwork, because, you know, the paperwork aspect of it should be a minor part of policing. It's a question of whether they are doing their duty by the nation, whether they're putting their backs into the work that they have chosen to do, and if they don't want to do that, maybe they should go and find other jobs that would allow them to slack off in this way.
Ashleen, can cops justify working from home?
Well, no. I mean, are the criminals that they're trying to catch, do they work from home? I'm confused, because how do they intend to get them? How do they... I just really can't understand the reasoning behind this. And also, if they're detectives, they're saying the majority are detectives, they're going to need to bounce off ideas and speak to their colleagues about things, not just sit at home and make a tea and make another cup of tea and get sidetracked. I think it's ridiculous and that they should be in work. But I understand that maybe funding has something to do with this, maybe, but it's no excuse. I think, what are they going to do now? Arrest criminals via email next? I don't get it.
Rakib Ehsan, offering an alternative viewpoint, why don't police officers also deserve a work-life balance? They haven't had a pay rise in many years. And the argument from many police forces is that this is actually better from an admin point of view, because if you're at a laptop at home, you can get more done, there are fewer distractions, than doing work at a computer in a busy police station.
But the reality is, Mark, if you want to address neighbourhood crime, that means gathering crucial information, on-the-ground community intelligence, and it's very difficult to do that by working from home. And I think, very interestingly, you mentioned in your monologue that the police increasingly, they are almost policing social media platforms, what's being said there, but they're very reluctant to, in my view, fulfil their bread and butter responsibilities when it comes to tackling neighbourhood crime. You see the public figures in terms of public confidence in local police forces addressing crimes such as theft and burglary. they are depressingly low, and local police forces need to understand that their primary duty is to maximise public safety in local communities, and at the moment they are struggling to do that.
What's your view? Can the police justify working from home? Mark at gbnews.uk. Have you been a victim of crime in the recent weeks or months? What's your experience? Do you feel safe in this country? Are the police doing a good enough job? Do let me know. Coming up in the news agenda with my panel later in the show, should the rich feel guilty about their wealth? We'll be talking about the rich list of Brits later this hour. And after 10 o'clock, should Britain be giving back foreign treasures like the Elgin marbles? Your dating disasters, and does society ignore the importance of sleep? At GB News on Twitter, Mark at gbnews.uk via email. Next up in the big question, should we go vegan to save the planet? See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A big reaction to my big opinion monologue, which is all about the police who want to work from home. I don't think it's acceptable. I think we now have law and disorder in the UK. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. This from Peter. Dear Mark, your brilliant monologue needs the oxygen of publicity and should be published with copies sent to offenders in the public sector. Also, an excellent monologue on the police, says Chris. Passport Office. Terry says, hi, Mark, I've got to support the Passport Office. I applied online for a renewal 3 weeks today. It arrived at my door. I can't complain about that. Methinks we usually hear of these slow cases and not the many that are processed in a reasonable time. Great show. Keep it up. Well, Terry, thank you for watching the show and for sharing your views on that one. More on policing from home. Philip says, dear Mark, the police are yet another part of a failed civil service that is not fit for purpose. I have no faith in any of it anymore. If you sacked the lot of them, nobody would notice a drop in service. Policing, Gary says, dear Mark, well said. You hardly see police nowadays on the roads, relying on dash cam footage to arrest bad driving, and you never see police on the streets. However, not everyone agrees. Let's have a look at this from Richard, who says, Mark, stop the nonsense about gold-plated civil service pensions. I work for a police force as a civilian. I do not have a gold-plated pension and have to work 35 plus years to get a half-decent pension. Police do not police from home. Certain admin work can be done from home. You cannot mix up response policing with a back office role, which can be done from home. Working from home is not slacking off. People can be more productive at home, says Richard. But I give you this, rainbow helmets are utterly ridiculous. Your panel seems really confused, but the problem is with your question asking, can the police police from home, when that is not what is happening at all. Richard, thank you for setting the record straight as you see it. Do keep those emails coming in, mark@gbnews.uk. Lots more to get through right now. It's the big question. You'll love this. A new ad campaign has been launched promoting a vegan diet. A world-first advert highlighting the environmental impact of animal agriculture was seen by hundreds of thousands of people over the weekend. The Hell of a Steak commercial, which comes from non-profit organisation Vegan Friendly UK, aired during the Eurovision Song Contest in Israel on Saturday night and is set to appear on UK screens this week. And it will likely be shown in America in the months to come. Take a look.
Do you know what you want?
There's one dish that looks interesting. Excuse me? What's hell of a steak?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. We put so much effort into this one. You won't believe what we go through just to bring it to your plate. We take a piece of land, about the size of 3 football fields. We water it with about 800,000 gallons of water to produce more than 18,000 pounds of feed and hay. All of that just to feed a single cow for your hell of a steak, as if world hunger doesn't exist.
Fantastic propaganda, ad campaign. Well, what do we think? Are these claims about the impact of a meat-based diet on the environment true? That's tonight's big question. Should we go vegan to save the planet? Would you be willing to forego your steak, your chicken breast or your salmon to reduce carbon emissions? Joining me to discuss this is, I'm delighted to say, Geordie Shore star and fitness coach, Jay Gardner, who is a practising vegan. We also have the farming coordinator at Viva, Kerry Waters, and they are an organisation that are supportive of a vegan plant-based diet. I'm also delighted to welcome Mail and Telegraph journalist and author Ross Clark and the political relations manager for the Countryside Alliance, David Bean. Let me start, if I can, with you, Kerry Waters. Should we go vegan to save the planet?
Well, the IPCC just last month produced a report warning of the impact of climate change on the planet at the moment. In it, they said that plant-based alternatives and also cellular agriculture, so that's your lab-grown meats, they are the key to solving the issues that you saw in that clip. So issues of animal welfare, land use, zoonotic disease, pesticide, antibiotic reduction. But it's not just the IPCC, it's also the World Health Organization, Chatham House, Oxford University, and also the World Wildlife Fund. They all state that a plant-based diet is necessary, and a plant-based diet is also advocated as healthy for all stages of life by the British and American Dietetic Association. The science is very clear that switching to vegan diets is a simple way to reduce your carbon footprint, but also solve the ecological crisis. However, the UK government and the National Farmers Union, the ADHB, they're doing nothing to prepare farmers for this. They're doing nothing to help farmers to transition and keep producing quality plant-based vegan food. The debate seems to be almost always centred around how to make meat more sustainable when the science is shaky at best. And the massive disruption is about to come to the industry in the form of these new technologies and the impact of climate change. So where is the government in providing support and training and infrastructure to save our British farming? Instead, they're throwing farmers under the bus with these new agricultural reforms. And farmers are suffering from spiralling costs of feed and fertiliser due to the war in Ukraine and Brexit. So myself and Viva, I'm currently doing a doctoral research at Edge Hill University to look into what is a just transition for animal farmers. And also we've set up Viva Farming because vegan farming and vegan food really is the only way to save the planet.
There's an issue, though, isn't there, in relation to the plant-based diet, Kerry Waters, which is that we are omnivores and we need animal protein, which is the most bioavailable source of protein out there. The issue you've got with non-meat alternatives is that vegan burgers are full of unhealthy ingredients and require air miles. And, of course, the production of plant-based food involves vast monocrop agriculture, pesticides and fertilisers. Not very natural.
Well, if you look at transport costs, it really does figure very little when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. Most of it comes from ruminant animals and feed. When you're talking about a plant-based diet, what we mean is a whole foods diet based on healthy grains and rice and beans and pulses. And actually, you'll find that the bioavailability of things such as soy is actually quite close to animal protein. And when you put, say, a rice and a bean together, you'll get a full amino acid profile.
OK, well, let's speak to Jay Gardner. Great to have you on the show, Jay. Geordie Shore star, of course, fitness coach. You are the picture of health, and you're a vegan. Tell me more, Jay.
Yeah, so I went vegan about 3.5 years ago. Before I was vegan, I was eating a fully meat diet. I was eating about 3 chicken breasts a day, 10 to 14 eggs. I was drinking milk from the glass. And I turned it around. I just wanted to go healthy. I researched different diets across the globe. And a lot of it was pointing towards reducing your animal product intake. And I eventually went vegan to become healthier, and I've never looked back. And to put that in perspective, I mean, my blood pressure is now 120/84. My cholesterol's in the 2s. I never suffer from a headache anymore. I feel a lot better. So for me, for my journey, it's worked on that health aspect in comparison to what I used to do.
OK, well, it's a compelling argument that you've posited, Jay, as have you, Kerry Waters. There you go, Ross Clark. You lose weight, your blood pressure goes down, you look as fantastic as Jay. Plant-based diet, what's not to like? You even saved the planet.
Well, I mean, far be it for me to tell Jay what to eat, but I mean, I would have said from what he's described, he's sort of gone from one extreme to the other. And there is a sort of happy medium in between where we are, as you say, omnivores. We eat a bit of meat, we eat a bit of dairy product, plant. I mean, most people do have a plant-based diet. I think in the sense that most of their calories probably come from plant products. But you know, when you speak to vegans, you say all about the sort of dangers of mineral deficiencies, vitamin B12 deficiency in particular, and they always say, "Oh, it's okay because I take the supplements." And you say, "Well, what does it say about your diet that you need supplements?" I don't take food supplements. I don't take dietary supplements, pills and so on. I just have a balanced diet. And I mean, that is the best option for everybody. And I mean, to go back to the sort of environmental project, sort of reducing the footprint, the carbon footprint of meat industry. And so, okay, fair enough. But you can deal with that in other ways, such as, experiments feeding cattle seaweed supplements reduces hugely the amount of methane they produce, and methane being the problematic greenhouse gas. You can farm cattle in buildings, collect the methane and use it as a fuel. And there's a company in Denmark, I think, that actually produced a tractor powered by methane that runs on methane produced on the farm. So I don't think you should see that the sort of ruminant animals as a problem. I mean, sometimes in some sense it could be a resource. The methane can actually be used. So I say we are omnivores. Meat is part of our diet, and I say if there are environmental problems, sort those out and don't just sort of turn us vegan, because you're going to end up with serious dietary problems for many people.
David Bean is the political relations manager for the Countryside Alliance. David, do you think we need to go vegan to save the planet? Would farmers be willing to transition to producing plant-based foodstuffs?
I think that farmers are extremely versatile and they would be able to manage a change if needed. But that's not necessarily the case for all farms, because part of what is determined by what can actually be brought and produced on a given farm has to do with the nature of the land itself. And we find that a lot of the farms that specialize in producing particularly sheep in the upland areas, that they aren't using land that would be suitable for growing crops in the first place. Similarly, there is land that is being brought into use for example, solar farms. I was on a train just last week and I passed one of these and I saw sheep grazing around it. Well, that is not land that would be suitable for growing crops. Really, there are certain environments where livestock farming really is the only suitable use that it can be put to.
Yes, and we get a lot of value out of cows, for example, don't we, David? We use their skin, the hide of a cow, for leather, which is a lot more environmentally friendly than so-called vegan leather, which is basically polyester or plastic. We use the blood, which goes into many, many foodstuffs. The bones are ground up as fertilizers, ironically, to produce and grow plants. We use the meat, of course, which we eat. I mean, there's no bit of the cow that's wasted. We even drink the milk.
Yes, and I think the one thing that you didn't mention, which is also extremely important for those people who, and we had mention made earlier of concerns over fertilizer prices, and that is a big problem at the moment. A lot of people who want to promote veganism are also very enthusiastic about organic farming. And what is it that fuels organic farming? Well, yes, the bones are part of it, but actually the manure is a huge part of what goes into organic farming. And if you take away the ability to produce that by livestock farming, then you are going to remove a resource that is extremely valuable to all manners of farming.
My concern, Ross Clark, is that at the moment, what is the gentle suggestion by the government and by supermarkets that we should go plant-based is going to become an instruction at some point. That's my concern. Ross Clark. We're just connecting with Ross Clark at the moment. I think you'll agree it's an interesting conversation.
Let's say the
Ross, do you mind? Forgive me, Ross. Do you mind? We just missed the start of that. My concern is that at the moment we've seen it in the pandemic that what is a suggestion or advice from the government and from big business will eventually become an instruction.
There are plenty of people who would love to force veganism on us. Except a lot of vegans, I mean, it's a matter of choice. They're not trying to stuff it down our throats. But there are some sort of, climate campaigners, the extreme end of that, who would love to force veganism on us. And it's true. As for the supermarkets, I mean, I don't think supermarkets are going to force us to become vegan. I mean, I think they're reacting really to veganism as a fashion, and they will produce vegan. But I mean, I've never been in a supermarket where I've had any trouble buying meat, for example, and I don't think your local Tesco's is suddenly going to fall for the sort of extreme environmentalism and start banning meat from their shelves, and they would suffer, a mass walkout of their customers if they did.
Well, I wouldn't put it past them after we've seen their behaviour during the pandemic, but here's hoping, Ross, we will have freedom of choice when it comes to going to the supermarket and what we buy. Kerry, if I could come back to you. Last year, a study by University College London's Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health said parents must be aware of the risks of a vegan diet. In fact, children on vegan diets were found to be 1.2 inches shorter on average, with smaller and weaker bones. And as mentioned there in Ross Clark's answer earlier, that it's recommended they take supplements. Shorter kids, it's not a ringing endorsement for a plant-based diet, is it?
Well, I know the study you're referring to, and that has been used as a stick to bash veganism by the newspapers. I think the authors would be horrified by that, especially as the lead author advocates for a plant-based diet. But when you look at the actual findings of the study, the difference in height was about 5%. But the real interesting fact was that vegans had a 25% lower of cholesterol, which means that they suffer less from heart disease. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be a bit shorter than die of a heart attack.
Well, of course, that's a view that was fleshed out in that study in relation to heart health. Jay Gardner, are you going to stay on the vegan diet?
Yeah, 100%. I've been on it for 3.5 years, and touching on the health aspect and obviously the vitamins and mineral aspect of it, I know exactly where I'm at in regards to what I should be eating and my intake daily. But I mean, for example, the fibre intake, if you're on a meat diet, your fibre intake is going to be considerably lower than that in comparison to a plant-based diet. And I know Ross touched on the B12, and basically they believe that you get enough B12 by eating meat, but how much B12 is in meat? We don't actually know. You know, it's not labelled on the packet. We don't know that, and it's reconstituted. They're fed it via, you know, antibiotics and vitamins themselves. They don't produce it. Whereas I know exactly how much B12 I'm getting. So if I was to ask the average meat eater how much B12 how much B12 do you get daily, they probably wouldn't be able to answer the question.
Jay Gardner, yeah, you're obviously in fantastic shape. You look brilliant. You're a fabulous-looking man. I do hope Mrs. Dolan isn't watching, because she'll be rethinking her decision to marry me in the first place. But would you be the beefcake that you currently are, if it hadn't been for all the meat that you ate in the many years of your life since birth?
No, it's got absolutely nothing to do with that. You know, I'm in better shape now than when I was eating meat, and I feel a lot better. People always say that you need where do you get your protein from? But that protein aspect is taken out of proportion. A human, since protein's been recorded, nobody's ever been protein deficient. You couldn't even go protein deficient. It'd be hard to go even if you tried. So that protein aspect, you can get enough protein. I mean, I'm an example of that on a plant-based diet.
Isn't there a problem, though, Jay, with a plant-based diet having more carbohydrates in it? That you're going to be eating potatoes, bread, pasta, rice. I mean, we know all of those things spike insulin and make you fat.
No, not at all. There's always an alternative to a meat when you're eating meat. Whatever you would normally eat, you can get as a plant-based option, and you can get healthier options as well. My diet's high protein. If I want to drop it and have it low carbs, I can do, and if I want to increase the carbs, again, I can do. I think, you know, it's the research aspect of it, which I spent a lot of time doing. So I know exactly what I should be eating, rather than a lot of people might jump into the vegan diet and think, oh, I'm vegan, I'm healthy. You can be an unhealthy vegan, just like you can be unhealthy on any diet. But if you take that healthy aspect and you do enough research, you can be very healthy from it. And one of the reasons that I cut out meat as well is, and now we're touching on the health aspect, is a lot of meats like your type 1 carcinogenic meats, which are your processed meats, which potentially cause cancer. So your bacon, your burgers, your sausages, they cause cancer. And then you have your type 2 carcinogenics, so like your red meats or your beefs, they probably cause cancer. And for me, that is something that, you know, it's a little bit deep, but I didn't want to be on my deathbed at one point in my life thinking I wish I'd done more to prevent this. And 90 to 95% of chronic disease is down to your diet and lifestyle.
Jay, in a moment, before we conclude, would you be willing to show us just how fit you are?
In what aspect? Take me top off?
Well, we might have to do that. I'll also ask. I'm going to ask Ross Clark as well to show me his abs, because I know he's got a few, as well as plenty of brain cells. Ross Clark, Marion in Scotland, has said, as usual, a great show tonight, Mark. I will never go vegan because you need a mix of foods. As I teach my 16-year-old granddaughter, we need fish, vegetables, beef, chicken, whole grains. She cooks lovely stir fries and a vast menu. And my concern is that, OK, Jay Gardner is going to have a healthy diet. Kerry Waters the same. Very articulate, educated people. But I wonder whether busy households won't have time to grate carrots and to steam broccoli and to infuse their rice with garlic and broad beans. You know, they're just going to be eating Linda McCartney sausages, aren't they?
Sorry, who are you asking?
Ross, just want to put that to you.
Well, sorry. Well, yes, exactly. I mean, as Jay said, there are unhealthy vegans around. I don't doubt there's a lot of people who could benefit from eating less meat and less animal products in general, and fried breakfasts and that sort of thing. I mean, that's not my diet. I mean, I always have a swear by a big bowl of porridge every morning. But, I seriously would not want to go without meat. And I think if I did, I think that some of us are actually really quite intolerant of some vegetable proteins. And you think of, vegan diets of people eating large amounts of lentils and so on. Well, I don't know about the cows producing a lot of methane, but I know I would produce a lot of methane after a diet based on lentils. And I think, the vegans often say, well, we've got a fantastic diet. Look at all these fantastic foods we eat. Well, I say, if you're an omnivore, there's nothing that stops you eating all the wonderful vegan foods they're trying to push at you. But, you can have a bit of meat as well. And it seems to me veganism is very negative in that sense, because it's taking something out of your diet. It's not putting extra things in. It's taking something out of your diet that's been in your diet for been in our diets for many thousands of years, and I think there's considerable perils in doing that.
Ross Clark, very briefly, if you can, you've written extensively in the Mail and the Telegraph about climate change and about how the science on that is not settled. You, as a journalist, question everything. I would have thought the science around meat production in relation to climate change is also not settled. We can't take what's been said by the plant-based movement as fact, can we?
No, there's a lot of propaganda, and I mean, you saw in the advert you showed at the beginning. I mean, they showed all this water. This is one of the sort of rather propagandist things we're told by some of the vegan lobby, that sort of meat requires vast amounts of water to produce, and what they do to get that sort of sum, they just add up all the rain that happened to fall on the fields where the cattle were produced. And, I say, if the cattle weren't there, I mean, the rain's still going to fall, isn't it? I mean, as we were saying earlier, it's not. There are large parts of Britain, for example, where it would not be possible to produce the kinds of, almonds, avocados, soya, and all that sort of thing. One of the reasons we've ended up with the diet we have in Britain is because of the availability of farmland and the suitability of the farmland to produce and you say, a cow in some senses is not an efficient way of feeding a human being, in that it takes the feed and calories and then you get fewer calories out. But actually, in the context of the farmland we have in Britain, a cow is actually quite an efficient device of converting low-quality pasture into high-quality food for humans. And, I think that the environmental argument is sort of hugely overdone.
If you're interested in what Kerry Waters has had to say, why don't you check out their website, viva.org.uk, which is a very interesting read. I went through it this afternoon. And if you're interested in the work of the Countryside Alliance, go to countryside-alliance.org. Just time for Jay Gardner to bear all and show us the benefits of a vegan diet. Jay, let's have it.
I wasn't expecting this, not going to lie.
It's the full Monty. Kids, look away now. OMG, look at those guns, look at the abs, it's happening. Round of applause. Jay Gardner, you are a legend. I'm going plant-based tomorrow morning. Mrs. Dolan won't know what hit her. I'll start with this banana. Brilliant stuff. Many thanks to Jay Gardner, Kerry Waters, Ross Clark and David Bean. I wish we had longer. What do you think? Should Britain go vegan? My Mark Meets guest is a woman who was married to George Best. Of course, Angie Best, his first wife. She's got an amazing story to tell. You won't want to miss it at 10. But after this, should rich people feel embarrassed or guilty about their health? See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'll get to your emails very shortly, mark at gbnews.uk, but it's time for our news agenda with my amazing panel. Returning to the sofa are social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ehsan, TV personality and broadcaster Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, and historian and writer David Oldroyd-Bolt. Britain's 2022 rich list was unveiled today by the Sunday Times, in which a record 177 UK-based billionaires were listed, collectively worth £170 billion. Rishi Sunak was revealed as the richest serving MP in history, whilst the Hinduja brothers topped the list, making more than £11 billion in the last year, taking their fortune up to £28.47 billion. But at such a time as this, in which our nation is facing a cost of living crisis, should the rich feel guilty about their wealth? Is being rich a bad thing? David?
Why should they feel guilty about it any more than anyone should feel guilty about being poor? These are people who, particularly the people you've just mentioned, the Hindujas, have made products that people want to buy. They've made really good products. They've employed a huge number of people. They've paid their taxes. I don't think there's any question that they have not done this. And so what's to feel guilty about? They've added to the world. You think of someone like Bill Gates, someone like Elon Musk, someone like Jeff Bezos. These are people who have made our lives easier and better. These are people who, through their philanthropic charities, through their contributions and through their activities, have made life better for billions of people. If that's something about which you've got to feel guilty, then crikey, we're all buggered.
But can that inequality be justified in our society, that disparity of wealth where people are getting fed by food banks whilst others are sitting on a kitty of several billion pounds?
You see, I'm a Tory, so I believe that inequality is a natural state of being. There are things we can do to ameliorate it, but there are always going to be people who are rich, always going to be people who are poor, and the massive people in the middle. Now, of course, it's for those of us who are better off to try to help those who are poor. And food banks, would we rather that they did not exist and that the people who don't have the money to eat well were going hungry? Is the state to take on the responsibility for absolutely everyone, or is it better, as I believe, I think many people believe, that private charity steps in and that the individuals who are better off try to help those who aren't?
But doesn't the existence of billionaires demonstrate how dysfunctional capitalism is? Because, I mean, I am a capitalist, I'm a libertarian, and I think people should try to keep as much of their money as possible. I don't think taxes should be as high as they currently are. I believe in aspiration. But you don't need £10 billion, do you?
It's not a question of need, is it really? It's a question of what people are willing to buy and what services they want to consume. And if someone, through his or her own innovation and intellectual capacity has earned that money and invented something like, say, Amazon or Microsoft that's revolutionized the world. I think it's just that they are rewarded for that and just that they're not taxed into oblivion, because the moment you start doing that, the moment you start saying, what do you actually need, you put a block on enterprise, I think. We saw this in the 70s here, when all of the rock stars left and went and lived in Switzerland and Monte Carlo and south of France, when people didn't start new businesses because taxation on dividends was 98%, on income was 88%. What's the incentive to do well there?
Yeah. Well, Phil Collins went to Switzerland, so it wasn't all bad. Aisling, is it immoral to be that rich?
I think if you're not doing anything good with the money, then it is slightly immoral, yes. I think as long as you are helping others where you can, I just think to have that much money and not do a little something for the rest of the world is selfish.
But
and
is
not
it right
nice.
that we've got to trust these people to do that? Because they're not all good people, are they?
But what are we going to do, police them and take their money? We can't. So I don't think people should be embarrassed of their wealth.
Should there be a billionaire tax?
Yes.
In
Maybe.
which billionaires pay 50 or 60%? Because that would fix all
Wow.
our financial
No, that would
problems,
be
wouldn't it?
totally unfair, because then, you know, people that have really worked hard to get to that level of money, to have it all taken... No, I don't think
Well,
that's fair.
if there's a 50% tax on millionaires, they're left with $500,000.
Exactly,
which
yeah.
is actually, you know, that's
not
not
fair.
a life-changing
No.
amount of money. But if someone's got 10 billion and they're down to 5 billion, they'll still be all right, won't they?
Yeah, but I think if they've worked hard to earn it, I don't think that they should give half of it away. I don't think that's fair. I think they should do something good with it, but not have it taken off them. No way.
Being rich is something that could keep Rishi Sunak out of number 10, isn't it, Rakib?
Well, I think that when we're talking about Rishi Sunak in particular, I think it's a debate about to what extent do the British people want a chance for the Exchequer to actually understand what they're going through. And I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for him, considering that I would consider him to have super wealthy status. If you're talking about the broader debate in terms of, you know, is it immoral to be rich? We have to understand that many rich people started off fairly traditional working class, but they've built their way up. And in doing so, they've created a great deal of jobs. Through their entrepreneurial innovation, they've reached that stage of wealth. And quite often you'd see that, you know, major businesses, people running those businesses, there's a differentiation between some of them could invest more in terms of trying to create even more jobs, expand their businesses, but some of them do. And I think we have to really make that differentiation. But I think all in all, if you want to talk about a super wealth tax, I think that I'm a bit uncomfortable in terms of how anti-aspiration that could come across. And I think post-Brexit Britain has to understand that it has to remain fairly open. And the reality of the matter is, whenever political parties have talked about fundamentally redesigning our Anglo-Saxon capitalist economy, they haven't done very well at the ballot box, especially among working-class people.
I guess the painful truth, Aisling, is it's a deal with the devil. We actually need these billionaires in our country because they employ people, they set up businesses, they invest, and they buy Rolls Royces with VAT at 20%.
Well, I love Rolls Royces, so I'm here
What's
for
the
it.
VAT on a silver Phantom? Probably about £40,000. Goes straight into building a school or a hospital, doesn't it?
Well,
if you clobber these people or demonise them, they'll just go somewhere else.
Well, I think exactly that. And I just think as long as they're not flaunting it in the face of people that are really struggling, what's the issue?
Do you think that the mood music is changing, David, and that we are starting to demonise wealthy people?
I think there's always been that tendency in this country, tall poppy syndrome, that people who wish they were that rich or that successful think that those who are that rich and successful should be punished. And I think that's always something to be aware of. And it's a peculiarly British thing that somehow these people don't deserve it, even if they've worked. There's someone like James Dyson, for instance, who's built one of the most extraordinarily successful technology companies in the world, which he did off his own bat, and brilliantly, is still somewhat viewed with suspicion, I think. Yes. But I think most people, and particularly working-class people, who just want to be able to get on and do well and earn money and look after their families, most people I don't think would be embarrassed about it.
OK, we'll return to this conversation. What do you think, Mark at gbnews.uk? John says, dear Mark, why do you care if someone is a billionaire? They either invest their money or they don't, and it trickles down to the economy. Lots more to come, including Mark Meets with Angie Best. See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10 o'clock and you are listening to and watching Mark Dolan Tonight. A jam-packed hour ahead for you. My Mark Meets guest was the first wife of footballing genius George Best, and she was an international model and Playboy bunny. She tells her incredible story in 2 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. And let me tell you, she still looks amazing. In the news agenda with my panel, should Britain return foreign treasure like the Elgin marbles? Your dating disasters, and does Britain get enough sleep? Plus another great British game show, a topical game. Tonight, based around rich celebrities, we'll play a game of Show Me the Money. A cracking hour to come. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. But first, here are the headlines with the never boring.
Mark, thank you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is understood to have held a meeting with Sue Gray for an update on the progress of the Partygate report. Contents of the report were not discussed. Earlier today, Boris Johnson insisted he won't block names when it's published next week. He's vowed to shake up Number 10 after 126 fines were issued for breaches during lockdown. A man who attacked a commuter with a machete has been found guilty of attempted murder. Just a warning, the video you're about to see shows the moment of the attack and may be distressing to some viewers. 34-year-old Ricky Morgan launched an unprovoked attack on the London Underground last summer, hacking at James Porritt as panicked passengers scrambled to get away. Mr. Porritt, who suffered a severe injury to his hand, told jurors it was like a scene out of the sci-fi film Terminator. Celebrity chef Jamie Oliver's been leading a protest at Downing Street over the delay in new junk food laws. An overhaul to buy one, get one free promotions in supermarkets was due to go ahead in the autumn, but it's been pushed back to October next year. Tesco and Sainsbury's say they're committed to the original government deadlines, but the Prime Minister says consumers need to be supported through the cost of living crisis.
There are some things at the moment where we think they make very little difference to obesity, and they can affect people's weekly outgoings, people's budgets. And at this particular time, if people can save on their food bills with some offers, then I think we've just got to be flexible whilst continuing to tackle obesity.
Meanwhile, Jamie Oliver says it's time for change.
This is fundamental, and it's for all your people listening. It's not about one thing here and one thing there. It's a bit annoying. Like, it's as profound as the smoking ban. It saves lives. It's about making young people do better, live longer and be more productive.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has tested positive for COVID. Writing on Twitter, she says she's experiencing mild symptoms and will work from home over the next few days. Her positive test comes as the UK's COVID alert moved down from level 4 to level 3 today. Wimbledon will be stripped of its ranking points over the decision to ban Russian and Belarusian players from competing at this year's tournament. The decision to exclude athletes from the two nations was made after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Association of Tennis Professionals says the move undermines the principle of players qualifying on merit and without discrimination. The Women's Tennis Association has also decided not to award ranking points following the ban. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's straight back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight, a jam-packed hour of big guests, big debate, big stories and big opinions. In just a moment, I'll be speaking to businesswoman, model and George Best's first wife, Angie, on the highs and lows of living with a genius and, of course, a drinker. Plus, she is a fitness and health guru as well. She has trained some of the biggest stars in the world. She's going to sort me out in a couple of minutes. I should have rephrased that, but you get the idea. Family show, be careful. In the news agenda, should Britain return foreign treasure like the Elgin marbles to Greece?
Yes.
Your dating disasters as well. Has it gone wrong for you in a date? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. And does Britain get enough sleep? What are your top sleeping tips? Reacting to those stories and many more are my brilliant panel of social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Hassan, TV personality Ashleen Horgan-Wallace and historian David Oldroyd-Bolt. And we've got a first look at tomorrow's papers at 10:30. But first, it's time for Mark Meets. Yes, indeed, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sports, showbiz and beyond. Tonight, a woman lucky enough or unlucky enough, depending on which way you look at it, to fall in love with a footballing genius. George Best's talents were so great as to be inexplicable. Whilst playing for Manchester United, he was named European Footballer of the Year, and he's considered one of the greatest players in the history of the game. After making his debut at United at the age of 17, he scored 179 goals from 470 appearances over 11 years and was the club's top goal scorer in the league for 5 consecutive seasons. He won 2 league titles and the European Cup with the Reds. Here he is in action.
Collins' header that was. Comes the best. And it's there. Beautiful. Absolutely.
Incredible stuff. But this man who achieved perfection on the pitch was often responsible for quite the opposite off it. Angie Best, then Angie MacDonald-Janes, met George Best at a dinner party in Los Angeles in 1975 when he was signing to play for the Los Angeles Aztecs, and it was love at first sight. Angie was a highly in-demand international model, and she even worked for Playboy for a while as a bunny friend. I can't imagine what George saw in her. Angie and George moved to London in 1976. When she returned to Los Angeles, George followed and persuaded her to marry him. She did so on the 24th of January 1978, and the marriage produced a very fine son in Callum. And that was in 1981. A young model, of course, who went on to have a career on the catwalk just like his mum. But George and Angie separated in 1982 and divorced in 1986 due to George's drinking. Despite everything George put her through, she claimed in her autobiography, George and Me, I remained good friends with George. He is the only man I ever loved. I'm delighted to say that Angie Best joins me now. Hi, Angie.
You are slippery buggers on this show, aren't you?
Go on, tell me more.
I said, what am I on to talk about? And they said, oh, your health, your fitness, your life.
Oh, no.
And, of course, you want to talk about George.
Oh, gosh, no.
Nobody told me this was going to be about George. You see, what happens, Mark, you have to forgive me here, but what happens is, when I talk about George, I get the trolls saying, oh, it's all about George. You've never done anything else. You're not anything else. You're just making money off of George again.
Oh, no.
That's what happened. So I said a while ago, I can't talk about George anymore. And nobody told me this was going to be about
well,
George.
look, first of all, I apologise to you. I did not get the memo that you weren't happy talking about George, but you don't have to worry because your story is...
I am happy talking about George.
Well, of course, but I understand that you will receive criticism that somehow you're dining out on his reputation and that sort of thing.
Again, yeah.
Well, look, let me tell you that
and
I certainly...
3 times since I've been here, I've asked, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, let me take full responsibility for the mistake. And
no, don't.
I apologise. I certainly wasn't aware that this was a condition of the interview.
So it wasn't a condition.
Well, no, but you expressed a desire not to bang on about somebody that you were married to 4 decades ago, and I completely understand that.
Thank you.
And so, therefore, how hard was it to move on from that marriage in the 80s? Mid-80s, right? 86?
Yeah. I went back to America when, in that time, nobody knew who George was. So Callum and I grew up in peace as 2 ordinary people.
Yeah. And, look, you remained on good terms.
Because you see, as you can see, it was so hard because being married to somebody like George, all I could ever be here in this country was George's ex. And I had so much more to do with my life. So I went back to America and continued there.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, that's the thing. You were an international model when you met. You were, I mean, he was obviously a big star, probably the most famous footballer in the world, but you were an in-demand model. So were you based in America at that time, the mid-70s?
When I met George first?
Yeah.
No, I was modelling in London and I met him at Olympia at a fashion show.
So how did the modelling come about, apart from the fact that you're obviously very, very beautiful? But how did you get into the industry?
My mum sent me to the Lucy Clayton School of Modelling.
Right. And was there an audition? Did you send photos in? How did it work?
Well, you had to go to school to learn how to walk and how to behave, right? And how to, the thing on your head, it was the real thing. You had to go to the School of Modelling. This was in the early 70s, remember? So...
how old were you when you went in there?
17.
Right.
And then when you go... if they think you have a career, they ask you to stay on their books.
OK.
So I stayed on.
So there's a certain walk, is there, if you're a model?
It's not so much a walk. It was in those days, but it's just, yes. It's more about how they said that you had to learn how to carry yourself.
I see. OK. Posture would be a factor too. How can you improve my posture to make me more model-like? Do I have to sit up straight?
Well,
is that what I've got to do?
I wouldn't have you working so hard.
Well, that would help.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what about your facial expressions? I mean, is that something you're taught in modelling school? The pout? The glare?
No, that all came along with the glamour girls, because Twiggy never pouted. She just smiled or just looked normal. She was beautiful. But when the glamour was brought into it, then they...
So if I'm doing my mathematics, you went into modelling in the 60s?
Yeah.
And that would have been a golden era for British fashion and for modelling, with the likes of Twiggy and yourself.
Yep. And then I went to New York and, God, can my brain go back that far at this time of night? I didn't last very long in New York because I wanted to be with the palm trees. I wanted to go where the palm trees were. So I took myself off to LA. And then when I was in LA, I went to a restaurant, a lunch at a restaurant called Roughage and the Anatomy Asylum, only in LA.
Of course.
And at Roughage, the man who owned it was a man called Richard Simmons, and he asked, he had a room in the back, and I said, what do you do with that room? Okay. And I said, let me teach class. So when I was in New York, I used to train with the dancers at Carnegie Hall. So when I met Richard, I said, let me teach class. So I made up a class that I did with the dancers that I thought that ordinary people could do. And so I started teaching class and that was it.
Yeah, and I know that your interest is not just in sort of beauty and looking your best, but being your best from the inside out, health, that kind of thing. So when did that become an interest of yours, being healthy?
From what I can remember as a young girl, because my father owned betting offices, and he would come home on a Friday night with carrier bags full of all different kinds of fruits and vegetables. That
I thought you were going to say carrier bags of cash. So
No.
it was a bookie.
No.
The bookie always wins.
Yeah. Carrier bags full of fruits and vegetables, and nobody else in the house would eat them. I would eat every single one of them, and I know today that everything that I ate was really good and really healthy.
Yeah.
So then when I went to LA, it just became, it was normal. It was part and parcel. And it was really fascinating because it's so easy to do over there. It's hard to do in this country.
Yeah.
But when the weather's warm, you're much more inclined to look after your health internally, because then it shows externally.
And because the weather's better in LA, people see more of your body. So there's nowhere to hide, is there?
No, exactly. And also because you're surrounded by beautiful people. Because every country in the world sends all their most beautiful people to LA to become famous.
Yeah.
Right? So everywhere you go, the supermarket, the petrol station, everybody's gorgeous. So...
Were you treated well in the world of modelling?
Oh, yes.
Any
yeah,
unscrupulous photographers or managers?
No, not a one. Well, it was too soon.
No casting
Babes,
couch?
It was 40 years ago.
This is all pretty
Metoo,
isn't it?
I did have one casting. It wasn't a casting couch. It was more... So when I got to LA, this man called Jack Gilardi, if I remember correctly, asked me if I'd like to be an actress. So I said, well...
Always a leading question.
I don't know.
I always used to fall for that one.
Did you?
Many times.
So he took me to... one night, he said, I want you to meet me at the Polo Lounge. I want to introduce you to some of my friends. So I go to the Polo Lounge, and I'm all dressed up and thinking I'm going to have a lovely evening. And I walk in, and there's 4 men sitting behind the booth, right? Jack Gilardi, Telly Savalas, and 2 others. I didn't know who they were.
Telly Savalas, star of Kojak, of course.
Yeah. We're going back to the 70s. So I walk in, and I look at these 4 guys, and I think, why am I sitting here with these 4 men? And they're all laughing and drinking, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, this doesn't feel right. So I excused myself and scarpered, because I thought, this is just not, so there is no such thing as casting couch. These women know what they're doing.
What are your thoughts about the Me Too movement?
I don't agree with any movements. I think each individual woman takes it upon herself to make changes, because that's where it begins, with the woman in the mirror or the man in the mirror, as Michael would say. So I don't agree. I didn't agree with the feminist movement, because it's women pitting themselves against men, which is stupid because they're so far superior. So I don't know. I don't
There's no contest, is it, between men and women?
No. Every woman has got it inside of her to be the best she wants to be. So if you want to make change, babe, you go ahead and start with you.
How did you become a fitness guru to some seriously big names, including Daryl Hannah, Cher and Sharon Stone?
Can we just say it's Sharon Stone?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Sharon Stone, yeah. Sorry.
That's what your people told me. I hope that wasn't...
No, you're right.
Another
I was thinking of
error.
Sharon Osbourne. Sorry, I was friends with her, but I wasn't her fitness guru.
Thank God for that.
Can we just
That's
say...
a tough gig, isn't it?
Yes. Can we just say...
Good luck
Happy
with that.
birthday to Cher. It's her birthday today.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Is
so
she 100 yet?
let's all sing happy birthday to the old girl.
Yeah, exactly. She's a remarkable person. Did she need a fitness guru? There's nothing on her, is there, Cher?
No, it wasn't about losing weight in those days. It was about being the best you could be. It was about being able to stand up on stage, sing your heart out, dance your heart out, and do it every single night. So it was about being fit, not about being skinny. Because we were beanpoles in those days because the chemicals weren't introduced.
You were married to that footballer. You've worked with the likes of Cher.
Are you getting the
Sharon
little
Stone.
nag from behind the scenes?
Not at all. But actually, I wonder if there's a through line. All of the celebrities that you've either loved and known very well, or the celebrities you've worked with, are they different to the rest of us? Is there a certain quality that someone like Cher has that others don't?
Yes. working with her, what I learned was a work ethic. She has a work ethic beyond anything else. If it's her job, there's a focus, there's a determination. You do what you've got to do to be your best to get the job done. And that is, because she is her own industry. Those individuals are their own industry. So they have to, just like a car manufacturer has the best parts for the best car, they have the best people working for them to make them their best. They never hear the word no.
Oh, that's it. They don't. That's just not in their vocabulary,
No,
right?
and that makes you a very special person when you don't hear the word no.
And so what is the key to good health?
That's a very good question, and it's so hard to answer in this day and age, because the key to good health is eating as nature intended. But what nature intended has been gone for years, I mean, centuries. The chemicals and the poison that are sprayed on our food make us eating healthy nigh on impossible. So in today's age, to be healthy and to eat healthy, it's got to be organic. It's got to be to uncondition the way you've been taught. We've been conditioned to eat generation after generation after generation, and it's all been wrong. What we're learning now is it's all wrong. Excuse me. For some reason, I've got a frog in my throat.
I think it's the bad air here at GBNews.
It's like in a rabbit tunnel, isn't it? Bless his heart.
It's Colin Brazier's aftershave. I'd like to apologise.
Is that what it is?
He's old school. Aramis.
I thought you were going to say Old Spice.
No. He's classier than that.
Oh, OK. Where were we?
But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this issue is that even if you eat vegetables and plants all day long, it's not adulterated. Yeah.
Yes, because what you're eating is chemicals.
We touched on veganism earlier in our big debate. Do you think there's an argument for veganism or not? Do you think we need meat?
I think what's happening with the veganism thing is that people don't like this mass farming of animals. So there is no humane way to destroy an animal, a cow or a pig or a lamb. And once you've seen a baby lamb, how could you possibly eat it? So for a while, we shut off the fact that we have to slaughter these creatures. So what happened was the veganism movement pointed to that, took that on board and didn't want it to happen. So it became the only way to live. I don't know that I agree with it 100%, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. But I don't agree with anything that goes full bore and takes away, I won't say what nature intended, because we don't know if nature intended us for eating meat, but they have been doing it since the Stone Age. But even that's not an argument, because they've been dragging women by the hair and what have you since the Stone Age. So I don't know.
Fred Flintstone.
I don't think it's going to save the world, no.
Now, going back to where the conversation started.
Our dear George.
You've certainly, having researched you this afternoon, never traded on that marriage. And, again, I would extend my apologies to you, thinking that we were only going to talk about George, because I've got so many questions about health and fitness and all the rest of it. People watching will be curious, knowing full well that you're not, perhaps unlike others, you're not somebody that has profited from his memory. You were his wife. You had a child together, Callum, who I've met and worked with. What a lovely guy. He got your good looks.
Thank you.
But in your book, your autobiography, there was a hook line. And in the hook line of the book is, I didn't realise that 6 years of marriage would last a lifetime.
Babes, it has. Look, here I am. And you introduced me as George, best wife, talk about George, and boom.
So is it the media? Is it the media really that are responsible for that?
Well, who else?
Yeah. I mean, privately, is it raised quite often as well? I mean, is it?
No, it's not. Yeah. I mean, it was 40 years ago.
Was it hard to find love after that marriage?
Fortunately, I did, but yes, it was. Because I always say, George, sometimes I look up and I say, George, you have a lot to answer for. Because people always say, oh, but he was the most magnificent footballer. But he was a very selfish, magnificent footballer. And in his alcoholic selfishness, he did a lot of damage. And that damage, it stays with you and with the people around him. And I think, personally, that when he got his new liver, and he was good for a year, and then he started drinking again, I think because when his brain started to come back to normal and he started remembering what he'd done to so many people, I don't think he could manage that guilt. So in order to get rid of those feelings and those emotions and those memories, it was the easiest thing to do was to have another drink.
Did you notice it quite early doors in the relationship that there was a problem?
I was young. I had no idea what alcoholism was.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. And I just thought he needed somebody to cook him dinner and look after him and love him and settle him down. But that wasn't the case.
But you have Callum to show for it.
Oh, I do. I wouldn't change a thing.
How's he doing?
He's doing absolutely magnificently. He's chairman of Dorking Wanderers Ladies Football Club.
That's asking for trouble, isn't it?
No, he loves his girls.
That's like a fox in a hen house, isn't
No, not at all. That's the old Callum. He's absolutely loves looking after these ladies, working with them.
Sure he does.
And he's really enjoying it because it's in his genes to the football.
Yeah.
He's a natural for it.
And you know what? He's prevailed over, some issues, hasn't he? And, managed to sort of,
yes,
make a great recovery in terms of his health.
Yes.
And I think there was a time when he wasn't looking after himself.
That's why I had to come back to this country.
And that is a great thing. And I feel, having spoken to him in the past, that he's got closure about that. But it can't have been an easy childhood for him.
Well, what wasn't an easy childhood?
First of all, his dad when his dad wasn't well and able to be a full father, and then the memory, the lingering memory, that the burden of that sort of legacy, I suppose.
Yes, everybody expected from Callum, and he had nobody to guide him to say, take these steps, don't take these steps. That's why I came back to this country, because I realised the boy needs grounding, and there was nobody here to do that, because when his father died, he was just floundering. There were no family members here to help him. So I came home, but eventually he found his way and all is good. What's the matter?
And so, tell me about this. What is next for you?
Next, babe, I'm going to be 70 years old next month.
How is that possible?
I don't know.
Have you had... this is another personal question. We'll probably fall out over this as well.
You'll probably fall out, but go ahead anyway.
Have you had work done?
Well, of course I have.
Have you?
Yes.
I tell you what, though, whoever's done it, it's pretty good.
It was done ages ago. Not a lot, just a little bit.
A little tweak here and there?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't look like a victim of the plastic surgeon's knife.
Well, thank the good Lord. What next for me is I want to make, which is so possible now, 70 the new 50.
Yeah. Well, look, bodily you're ready for that, aren't you? And you're living in the UK now?
I've been here for 15 bloody years.
Is that right? Do you miss America?
Desperately.
What, the weather, the people?
No, the freedom. The space, the freedom and the weather.
How did you get on with the pandemic?
Well, I loved it because I just did nothing. Well, I went to the gym every day and I make jewellery, so I was making my crystal jewellery.
Amazing. So do you sell that jewellery?
When I make it, yeah.
Oh, my goodness stuff. Look, I tell you what, it's been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you so much for coming in. And I've got an idea, which is why don't you come back to be on our panel? And we don't have to talk about marriages. We don't have to talk about the 70s.
It depends what your panel is talking about.
Well, we'll talk about politics and world affairs.
Ooh, lovely,
I'm sure you've got plenty.
Can we talk about menopause? I'm an expert on menopause.
Yes, you are, actually. We've only got a short moment, but you have written several books that are there for women in their 40s or over 40. One of them is on the menopause. So what do any of my female viewers who are watching that are going through the change need to know about the menopause?
That it's a natural progress of the body, like puberty. You do not need chemicals to go through it.
So you don't need chemicals to go through it. 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 You don't need chem Yeah, oh, well, that's really good to know. Well, look, I can't wait to get you back on the panel. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm sorry for being rude in the beginning.
You weren't rude.
It was just such a surprise. I was like, oh, God, here we go.
Well, of course, to be honest with you, we had a mix of things to talk about, but I can understand your sensitivity around that particular relationship that has, I guess, gone to define your life. And it's the fault of people like me, Angie.
I know.
It's always the media to blame. But I loved our conversation, and I'm sure our viewers did too. My thanks to Angie Best, who will return to our panel very shortly. I've got no doubt about that. Lots more to get through in the news agenda with my panel. Should we return foreign treasure, for example, the Elgin marbles, back to Greece? We'll discuss that next.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from it's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10:30, so it's time now to look at tomorrow morning's papers hot off the press. And let us start with the I paper, if we can. And here is their headline. Johnson and Sunak face new cabinet mutiny over the cost of living. Ministers revolt over failure by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to commit to consistent messaging on the economy, with dissent in the cabinet about a wider lack of strategy on the cost of living. Next up, let's go to the Mirror. The Wagatha Christie files. Court releases bombshell evidence from trial. Of course, we eagerly await the judgment of the High Court in relation to that rather exciting WAG battle. Also on the front page of the Daily Mirror, the Fat Cat Chancellor, Rishi's riches. This ties in with our conversation earlier about the political consequences of wealth. As families struggle with the cost of living, Sunak and wife on rich list with £730 million fortune. Moving on to the Daily Express now. Royal family secretly house refugees. The royal family secretly opened their doors to desperate refugees seeking sanctuary from the brutal war in Ukraine. There we go. A characteristically discreet response from our wonderful royal family. Unlike many celebrities who can't wait to tell you how many refugees they have housed. Right, Louisa, where should we go next? OK, the Telegraph is next. Truss. We will give Moldova weapons to stop Putin. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, says NATO could increase support to Ukraine's threatened neighbour. Also, huge backlog of power of attorney cases as civil servants work from home. Well, if you want to hear my views on police officers working from home, pop over to @GBNews on Twitter, where you will find my big opinion monologue on that very subject. OK, next up, we'll go to the Daily Mail. Fix cost of living crunch or lose election. A Mail poll reveals the toll of soaring prices and delivers a stark warning to the Prime Minister. Also, Beat the Squeeze with the Mail, unmissable new series by top money-saving expert, a very good friend of this show and of this channel, Jasmine Birtles. The Times newspaper, rail strike chaos looms. Unions threaten biggest walkout in modern history. Disruption could empty supermarket shelves. And a photograph of Jamie Oliver with his Eton mess demonstration outside Number 10, concerned about the Prime Minister cancelling a plan to make our diet healthier. OK, where should we go next? Should we take The Guardian? Revealed police chiefs to apologise for racism. Yeah, more of a distraction from actually doing police work and finding criminals. But there you go. What cost of living crisis? Sunak is the first frontline politician to make the rich list. Next up, where should we go? Let's have the Sun newspaper. Exclusive, make love, not war. I'm doing my bit on the side for Ukraine. Dad dumps other half for refugee they took in. Sounds like an episode of the Jeremy Kyle show, doesn't it? Fascinating stuff. And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction to tomorrow's front pages with my brilliant panel. Social policy analyst, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, TV personality Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, and historian David Oldroyd Bolt. And Ashleen, let's start with the cost of living crisis and the Mirror very much leading on the fact that Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, is a rich man and couldn't possibly relate to what the public are going through.
Probably right. No?
Don't you think this is just a rather sort of small-minded politics? This is identity politics, isn't it? It's the idea that unless you're actually in that situation, Rishi Sunak's not stupid. He understands the economy. He knows we're in trouble.
OK, so what's he going to do about it?
That's the other question. Because the issue is, Ashleen, and I think this is the tragedy of it, picked up on a brilliant monologue by Alex Phillips on this channel earlier in the week. And she said the Chancellor is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Because if he offers more help, such as tax cuts, or, basically just give people money to help them through, that involves borrowing more money, printing money, which creates inflation, which is the problem in the first place. So whatever they do to help, they're feeding inflation.
I agree. I hear what you're saying. I don't have the answers for that. It's a difficult one. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, David, do you think that the government are just going to have to accept that this cost of living crisis isn't going anywhere, that there's actually tangibly not much they can do?
I don't think they have to accept it. I have to say, I think it's rather unfair of the Mirror to go after Rishi Sunak in this way, because most of the money's not his, it's his wife's. And I thought in the modern era we were supposed to be judging people on their own merits and not those of their spouses. But I think there is a great deal that they could be doing at the Treasury. Lots of innovative tax policies, lots of ways of looking at macroeconomics that they're simply not doing. They're stuck in this weird sort of 1970s mindset that the only thing to do about inflation is to sit back, grit your teeth and hope it goes away, which it's not going to do. And, of course, the problem is that it's the very poorest who are hit the hardest by this.
But tax cuts will feed inflation, won't they? Because they have to be paid for.
Well, no, I think that's a sort of Gordon Brown mindset that's carried on way past its sell-by date as an economic idea. If you cut the right taxes in the right way, if you stimulate investment, and if you stimulate, therefore, good growth and good jobs growth, you, A, allow people to have the dignity of good lives, and B, you mean that when inflation is biting, as it will do until the money supply is brought under control, as we found out in the 1980s, you at least make sure that they can pay for food, for fuel, and to look after their families.
Do you think that inflation will fall away in the next 12 months, that we're overreacting? We heard the Bank of England's governor, Andrew Bailey, saying that food prices could get apocalyptic. But what do you think is the long-term outlook for inflation? Because I wonder whether I mean, it's a nightmare at the moment, but I'm not sure it's going to be with us for years.
It entirely depends on the attitude towards the money supply. As the former Bank of England Governor Lord King said today, proving that hindsight is the most beneficial of all senses.
My favourite drug, I'll be honest.
Indeed, because it was his policy, of course, after the great financial crash of 2008, to start this programme of quantitative easing. There was this idea that this will never feed in to inflation because it's all in the bond markets. Yes, but the problem is once it's sold, once those bonds are sold, and once it gets in there, you've got a big problem with far too much money in the system. There is something that could be done about it. It's called monetarism. It's a rather outdated...
So you control the money supply.
You control the money supply. In fact, get rid of money from the system. And then you have a recession. That's going to happen. Now, the question is, do we want a recession that's short and that's quite sharp and that leaves us with much lower inflation again? Or do we want a recession combined with extremely high inflation at the point at which it damages people's lives the most?
Meanwhile, the Times are running a story, rail strike chaos looms. Can people with jobs in the public sector justify going on strike, Rakib, at a time like this when the country is so broke?
Oh, I have to say, I think that, and I'm actually a member of a trade union. I couldn't support this kind of industrial action. I think it's incredibly opportunistic. I think that there's going to be, you know, the fact that this is going to be taking place is coinciding with the Platinum Jubilee, where many working-class Brits will actually be celebrating that. I think that it's very unfortunate that they've taken this course of action.
Meanwhile, the royal family secretly house refugees, a great example of the quiet and discreet dignity of the Queen and her family on an occasion like this.
Absolutely. We've seen plenty of people be very, well, overly open in terms of their participation in the Homes for Ukraine programme, and I think that we've seen a very interesting story in The Sun there, that they've become extremely involved in some cases. But yes, I think that very much shows that their sense of duty, a secrecy of duty, you could say, if you could frame it like that.
Well, look, more reaction to tomorrow's papers in headliners, which I'm presenting at 11 o'clock with the brilliant Josh Howie and Diane Spencer. But let's move on to our next story in the news agenda. The British government has agreed to talks relating to the possible return of the Elgin marbles. The marbles, a 17-figure collection of classical Greek marble sculptures, were removed from the Parthenon in Athens by Scottish aristocrat Lord Elgin and have been housed in the British Museum since 1816. The announcement comes following months of intense pressure from campaigners that started after Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. So what do we think about this? He declared, of course, that the marbles were stolen when he visited the UK in November last year. But with the Elgin marbles being just one set of historical artefacts that the UK is being asked to return, should the UK give back many other examples of foreign treasure? Rakib, it's a hardy perennial, this topic, isn't it?
It's difficult. It's difficult. But I think, for me, I think there's no harm in having talks between the UK government and the Greek government over this particular issue. I'd make the point there, it wasn't so much stolen, that there was actually permission that was obtained by the Ottoman authorities at the time. But, of course, if there is
I thought we lost the paperwork. I thought Lord Elgin took them and there was no paperwork to prove that,
well, it was a long time ago.
But the thing is, he didn't just sort of keep them in his country house, did he?
He sold them to the UK government.
Well, right, and then they went into the British Museum. And isn't the point about the British Museum that it contains many of the world's treasures? That the British Museum, alongside lots of other great museums in this country, that are just there for the world. And that actually, in many cases, these artefacts were rescued from wars and corruption.
Well, there's a possibility that these artefacts in some way, shape or form could have been destroyed at some point.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of safety, isn't there, in our country?
The Parthenon was being used as an ammunition dump by the Ottoman governor of the time. And that's why so much of it's demolished now, because it did actually blow up later on. So I think Elgin did a good service for world art. But the problem is, if you start going down this route of that should be there, that should be there, that every museum in the world is going to end up as some kind of nationalist structure where we only have art and artefacts that come from here. That, to me, defeats the point. I mean, for instance, if you go to Venice and you see the horses of St. Mark, which were looted from Constantinople in 1204, and then then went to Venice, Napoleon took them to Paris, they were returned to Venice. Are they eventually going to go back to Istanbul now? I haven't heard that the Turks are complaining about that very much.
No, that's right.
And this is the problem. It only seems to be we that give these ideas too much credence. Most countries around the world seem to say, look, we have all sorts of things in our museums, and you have lots of our things in your museums, and this is the way that museums function.
And there was a time when Britain was a world leader in the protection of, recovery of, curation of these historic items. And that if it wasn't for the Brits and for institutions like the British Museum, they would be gone.
Yeah, I agree. And there are certain artefacts you could make a good case for being repatriated, say the Benin bronzes, I think, which was just simply nicked. But things that we, and that was a sort of imperial conquest, but things like the Parthenon marbles and the Rosetta Stone, things that we have preserved, and the preservation of which has led to other countries around the world being able to preserve their own artifacts in a better way. That is it's a gift to scholarship, and it's a gift to world history.
If the Parthenon marbles go back to Greece, can they be reinstalled in their original setting?
Well, no, they'd have to be in another museum,
Right.
Unless you're going to rebuild.
So it's not like there's this, and the chunk of stone that needs to be filled back in again.
No, and let's not forget that we've got, I think, about 260 feet of the marbles. The Greeks have about 160 feet. So we've got more, but they still have quite a chunk of their own. And in both instances, what is not there is filled in with plaster cast. So in both countries, you can now see bits of the original and later simulacra. So it's the best of both worlds.
A fascinating conversation which will no doubt continue. Catching up on a couple of emails before the break. We were talking earlier about whether the rich should feel guilty about their wealth. And Jim says, Mark, the left always talk about wealth difference or the wealth gap. This is the politics of envy. We should simply concentrate on the level of the poorest and adopt policies that genuinely improve their lot. Confiscating money from the rich, as history shows, will level the playing field by dragging everyone down to the lowest level, not by making anyone richer. Barbara says, as an underprivileged person myself, I would say that the rich should not feel guilty. Anyone who does think they should is a hypocrite. The rich keep the poor. Possibly the poor should feel guilty. Doing a little something, the rich do, and Rishi is a highly intelligent man, so of course he understands, which is more than can be said for the dim critics. Barbara, thank you for that. Donald says the Amazons of this country are making their billions on the back of an underpaid workforce. Donald, thank you for that. Ricky says, why don't these billionaires reward the consumers that made them billionaires in the first place? Ricky, thank you for that. Also, civil servants and work from home. This from Tony, who says, Mark, I love GB News, but I'm really getting fed up of the civil servant bashing. I work in a job centre. We've been open throughout and have all been back in the office since May 2021. We dealt with 1 million new claims for universal credit during the first lockdown, and 99% of them were paid on time. We haven't had a pay rise in 2 years, and we work hard. Our pay is worse than people who do equivalent roles in the private sector. Please stop with this negativity. Also, we don't get gold-plated pensions. I earn 28k a year and work my nuts off. Tony, I've got no doubt you do. Thank you for your important email. Very much setting the record straight. I love getting your emails, especially ones that disagree with what you're hearing on the show, because this programme's all about opinions. Tony, keep them coming, and everyone else as well. Mark at gbnews.uk. Very excited because we've got lots more to come. Another great British game show. Also, do we undervalue sleep in this country? When was the last time you got a good night's sleep? See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates and strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A big reaction to my interview with Angie Best, who is a health guru, entrepreneur, and yes, she was married to George Best. I do love this email from Ian. You see, I'm not going to censor you guys because that's the nature of this show. Ian from Wimbledon says, "Hi, Mark. Well done for manoeuvring through that minefield with Angie Best. This may go down like a shit sarnie, but if she doesn't want to talk about Glorious George, why is she still carrying his name after 40 years? After all, he did go on to someone else." Well, look, harsh words from Ian, but he's entitled to his opinion. And thank you so much for watching that chat. Well, we are going to stand to our commitment to get Angie back on in the panel because she's an amazing lady. I can't believe she's 70, and we'll get her views on a range of topics. And we're getting those tonight from my brilliant panel of Rakib Ehsan, who is a commentator, broadcaster, writer, and much more. Aisling Horgan-Wallace, reality star, author, and actress. And David Oldroyd Bolt, cultural and political commentator and historian. Now, let's crack on. Sleep is precious, and for some, it's hard to come by. But instead of popping pills, insomnia sufferers will now be prescribed apps to get a good night's sleep. An app is basically a link on your website or indeed an actual piece of software on your phone. And that apparently is going to get you your ZZs. Up to 800,000 people who would normally be given medication could be offered a 6-week programme on the NHS. One trial found those following the programme got an extra 6 hours of sleep every week, with more than half of those using the app seeing improvements. So does society ignore the importance of sleep? Who's the best sleeper here?
Me.
Are you?
I love sleep. Yeah.
And you don't struggle to get it?
Oh, yeah, I really struggle. And I use these apps and sometimes I have to have sleeping pills, but I need a good 8-9 hours sleep to function the next day.
What happens if you get 5 or 6?
I'm just a horrible B word.
OK, is that right? Short-tempered?
And I can't concentrate on things and I lack energy and it's not a nice person. I'm not a nice person to be around.
Yeah. So you need that allowance, but insomnia has never been an issue for you.
Yeah, it is, and hence why I use these apps and then sometimes take.
So what do you do? What are your tricks then?
There's a rain app that I've got, or a mindfulness one.
So what, that you get the sound of rain?
Yeah, the sound of rain.
And that helps you?
Yeah, it really does. It really, really does. So I do believe in these apps and I do think that they work. I think that's a great thing if they're not prescribing pills and giving them an alternative.
Do you do anything else? Chamomile tea? A whiskey?
That's not really... No, I'd be out partying if I had a whiskey.
I'll go the other way.
Chamomile tea doesn't really work for me, no. But these apps are really good, so anything that can take people away from pills, I think is brilliant.
Rakib, do you think society undervalues sleep, but you often get people sort of bragging about how little sleep they get?
Well, I think it differs from individual to individual. Some individuals can function very well on very little sleep. Some individuals need a bit more sleep. So I think it's ultimately knowing your own body, being honest about how much sleep you need, and that's going to differ from one member of society to the other. I think for me, my sort of sweet spot is probably 6 to 7 hours. I think actually if it goes above 7 hours, I feel that I'm not as productive. Equally, if it goes the other way, then also it undermines my productivity.
There is such a thing as too much sleep, isn't there?
I think there is. I think that there is a thing
You never wake up.
oversleeping, and it sort of undermines your dynamism for that particular day.
Can I just say nothing undermines your dynamism?
Oh, well, you're very kind. You're very kind. So just in short, I think that people need to understand what their own sweet spot is when it comes to the amount of sleep that they should be having.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the economy if we had better sleep, David, because good sleep is linked to better health, which would reduce pressure on the NHS, and I think we'd get more done at work as well.
There's that, but there's also the long-term effect, because I think studies have shown that people who don't sleep enough end up with things like Alzheimer's and dementia, which, of course, is a vast cost to families in the pain that they have to suffer seeing their loved ones slip away through that. Vast cost to the economy, because we, of course, have to pay for the social care, which can sometimes go on for a decade. And anything that gets, as Ashley said, anything that gets people off pills and helps them to sleep more naturally, I think is a really positive thing. And it should be the sort of thing that the NHS is funding, not diversity quotients and not videos of people clapping. Do things that actually make people's health better and that makes the country better.
Well, there's an idea. It'll never catch on, you realise.
Of course not.
But I think culturally, I wonder whether we need to glorify it more, because the French famously go off for a 2-hour lunch break, sometimes 3 hours, and that's having a bite to eat and a lie down. The Spanish have a siesta,
exactly.
don't they? And, you know, so I wonder whether the Brits need to be, you know, I wonder, you're the historian, is it because of the Industrial Revolution that we just somehow now prioritise these long working hours?
Well, I think that's exactly right. It forced upon us an unnatural pattern of sleep and of work, because before then, there's a really rather good book published on this last year, and in fact, Robert Harris, the novelist, published a novel called The Second Sleep. The natural pattern of sleep was to sleep for a little while, and then wake up and do something for an hour or two, and then go back to sleep for a while. And, of course, this was when most people were agricultural labourers, and they would have got up with the dawn and gone to bed with the dusk. But this idea that you have to work between, say, 9 and 5 or 9 and 6, and that you can only be allowed to work during those times, and then you have to sleep between, say, I don't know, 11 and 7. It's so strange that we force this constructed idea of sleep and work on people when, as I think most people would recognise from their own experience, our ways of sleeping, of being and of working, of being productive are as individual as there are individuals on the planet.
I love the idea of napping, waking up, doing something small and then going back to sleep.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's not a bad shout, is it?
Sounds great.
Well, the most productive man I know, an historian who writes 10,000 words a day when he's writing his books, gets up at 5, works until lunchtime, has a 2-hour sleep, and then gets back to work until supper.
Blimey, we can but dream. Fascinating. This from Tom. Do not take tablets, Mark, to get to sleep. Have a set routine. Read and do not watch screens for 30 minutes before sleeping. Alcohol keeps you awake. You get immune to sleeping tablets eventually, so best to link with yourself and learn what makes you sleep. Tom, what a brilliant email. I love your emails. It's always the best part of my show. Now, we know that the Sunday Times Rich List has been published, which has inspired tonight's Great British Game Show. Can you at home and my panel in the studio guess how much these British-based celebrities are worth? Show me the money. OK, first of all, J.K. Rowling, best-selling author. How much is she worth, do we think? Rakib?
I've absolutely no idea.
I can tell you it's in the millions.
44.
44 million from Rakib.
46.
46 million. David, you're a published author. You know it's a bit higher than that, don't you?
Yeah, but she's given away over £1 billion. So I think she's probably worth about 500 million now.
870, according to the Rich List. 870 million. That's not bad for writing a few books. More than the Queen, who's, I think, on about 500 million. OK, how about Roman Abramovich? Not quite as much as he was once worth. What do we think?
6 billion.
Well done. It's the right answer. Exactly 6 billion. You're obviously friendly there with the Kremlin. How about the legendary actress Judi Dench? What's she worth? She played... was it M or Q? I always forget.
It was M.
10 million.
M in James Bond.
That, surely.
10 million? What am I hearing from you, Rakib?
17.
17?
Well, I'll go 20.
45!
Good Lord.
Wow.
And worth every penny. TV presenter Alexander Armstrong. Pointless celebrities. He's also written some books. Comedian, sketch actor. It's in the millions, but how many?
Let's say 8.
I was just going to say 8. I was just going to
Well, I'm afraid not. He's scratching by on 3.6 million.
Oh, he's
How does he manage?
How does he manage? Ed Sheeran.
Well, he's going to be the first British musician to be worth £1 billion, according to the papers today.
I think it will happen, but he's pretty far off at the moment. How close is he to £1 billion at the moment?
Well, let's say 600.
I'm going to say 625.
260 million. The drinks are on him.
Pathetic.
Well, listen, you, my audience, are priceless, as are my fantastic panel. Come back soon, folks. Loved it tonight.
Thanks,
Stick around, because I'll be doing headliners after this.
Good evening. I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A brighter day for most of us tomorrow. Not completely dry. There'll still be a few showers around, particularly in the west, but not as many as we've seen through the day today, courtesy of this large area of low pressure up to the northwest, and spinning around it, we've seen bands of heavy showers. Still some pretty lively ones around through this evening, but the worst of the weather is now heading out into the North Sea, so most places are becoming dry and there'll be lengthy clear spells overnight. We will keep some showers going in western Scotland. With those clear skies, temperatures could dip down to single figures in a few places, but most of us starting at 10 or 11 on Saturday morning. And most of us will start the weekend dry and bright with a fair bit of sunshine around as well. We will see quite a bit of cloud developing as we go through the day, and we will see a few more showers, chiefly in western Scotland, mostly over the Highlands, but some coming into Northern Ireland as well, and maybe one or two for western parts of England and Wales. But for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, much of tomorrow will be dry and bright, and we'll hang on to some sunny spells. It'll feel a bit warmer than today as well. Temperatures wide in the high teens, maybe 20 across the southeast, but still pretty fresh in western Scotland, where we'll see a bit more wet weather just creeping in through Saturday evening. The rain turning more persistent over the Highlands and the Western Isles, perhaps just staying to the north of the central belt. We'll see a bit of showery rain coming into parts of northwest England and northwest Wales too. As we head into Sunday, it's a bit of a southeast compared to northwest split, with northern and western areas mostly cloudy with some outbreaks of rain, whereas much of the south and east looking dry and bright, and we should hang on to some decent spells of sunshine across East Anglia, Lincolnshire and the southeast. And here, actually a bit warmer as well. Temperatures could get into the mid-20s possibly. Elsewhere, certainly where it's cloudier, with some showery rain, temperatures once more in the mid to high teens.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.